In my earned value oversight role, brought me into close contact with the military people who were responsible. They were called a Performance Measurement Joint Executive Group, or PMJEG. And over a period of time, as happens with any kind of government process in my experience, it becomes overly bureaucratic. Some people refer to it as over-implemented. And one of the things that was an artifact of the earned value process was the creation of a system description by the contractors that were being reviewed. And this process had deteriorated to the point that a review that I was scheduled to be a member of at a shipyard was delayed for years because the PMJEG member for the Navy demanded that the company have a satisfactory system description before agreeing to take a team into the plant. That took years before that was done. It left a bad taste in everybody's mouth. The book ended up being written by a consultant to satisfy people in Washington, not to actually identify the way that the shipyard was being managed. And so with that in mind, Gary Kustel and I set out to find a way to reform this. We did that through multiple means. We established a process action team where contractors could come in and talk to one another about the things that they were doing. We found ways to open up the dialogue, and it was ultimately unsuccessful. We found that the bureaucracy was so deeply entrenched that it took just an inordinate amount of time. And the cost of taking all of this time for these reviews of these contractors was that we didn't have effective management of an instant project or a contract. And so we sat down, Gary and I, and said, well, how long should it take a contractor to create an effective plan for even a large complex project? And we agreed that that was probably about 6 months. And so we said, well, instead of doing all of this earned value review, why don't we kind of subordinate that? The secondary reviews that were being done, the follow-up reviews, were known as subsequent application reviews. And we thought that there were too many of those and they were taking too long. So why don't we do a review of the contract oriented towards risk and planning to accomplish that particular contract? And let's make it a technically based review. And so Gary said, we'll do that. We'll call it a technical baseline review, or TBR. And so we found a mechanism to do that. We put it into the decision memorandum for one of the large programs that was coming through. It was the Theater High Altitude Area Defense, THAAD. And we put it into the decision memorandum. And then Gary was gone from the office one day, and I got called down to the boss's office where the director of procurement in the office of the Secretary of Defense was sitting with the boss, and they were looking at this document, getting ready to sign it. And they didn't like the technical aspect because they thought that it was too confining. And so on the spot, I renamed it the Integrated Baseline Review, and that was the beginning of the IBR.